The rights of labor. The labor principle states that whosoever creates value owns the value created, or whatever is created is owned by the creator. All social problems flow from contraventions of this principle. Adherence to this principle enables the labor theory of value to be validated. Contraventions of this principle generates economic injustice and economic inequality. The biggest disagreement with the labor theory of value is based on the supposed rights of capital. According to this argument, a person undergoes delayed gratification to save up a store of value, which he or she invests. This is the person's capital. Because he or she saves capital and because it represents delayed gratification, and because investing capital represents risk, the investor is entitled to any benefit accruing to him or her. This type of private investment is referred to as making money work for you. This, of course, is a reasonable argument when made in the context of the capitalist system. But it is a principle that nullifies the labor theory of value. The rights of capital say a person can charge what the market will bear for any goods and services produced. The labor theory of value, in contrast, says the value contained in any goods or services is a product of the labor invested. In simple language, the worker is paid a rate for producing the item and the price of the item reflects the total wages paid out to produce the goods or services. The argument based on the rights of capital have some merit but not as much as capital would like us to believe. Even if it is agreed that an investor deserves a return on their investment, is the level of reward determined at the sole discretion of the investor? Why the disparity between the one investing surplus capital and the one investing their future? Investors do take a risk, but so does labor. Taking a job is not without risk, because despite what capital may think, few people take a job with the expectation that it will lead to a paycheck for a few weeks or years. Labor takes a job for the reasons of security. They invest their life in a company, whereas the capitalist often invests nothing but surplus capital. Most people would like to see their job work out well enough to provide an income for the rest of their life. They are hoping for recognition and a payout commensurate with their effort and dedication. This never happens. The investor may lose his or her investment, but often the worker loses years that he or she can never get back. Labor and capital represent contradictory positions and incompatible ends. By the nature of their positions, the capitalist will want to invest in the company and build it up. He or she may be thinking of building it up to the point where it can be handed down to their heirs. The worker may be more concerned with day-to-day expenses. The worker wants enough money to live a good life. An employee with only a few years left to go before he or she retires is not going to be sympathetic with the company's desire to reinvest earnings. Capital cannot get rid of labor, but perhaps labor can find a way to get around the investment problem. To do this, we need a way out of the ownership problem. We cannot force people to pay for what they did not purchase. But nor can we help anyone avoid paying for what they did cause to come about. Injustice is of two types: overt and covert. Overt injustice is externalizing costs onto society and future generations. Covert injustice is avoiding the payment of what you owe. Labor has an inalienable right to the wealth they create. But this right has been rendered inoperable because the meaning of property rights has been corrupted. Words do not always mean what we think they mean. Property rights are not based on the law of the jungle. Rights are not equal to or a synonym of might. Might does not make right, nor does the end justify the means. Without the association of right with the law of the jungle, neither capitalism nor communism could exist. They could not exist, because the state would be viewed as apostatic and redundant. Its power would no longer be seen as justifying privilege. In a tribal society, the person who planted a seed or carved a boat from a log owned the increase or the boat. But there was little protection for the person who tried to claim the best land or a particularly nice quarry of flint stone. One could only own what they possessed directly, and that by imputing labor into it. Ownership, in previous eras, was based primarily on possession. But there was little benefit to stealing things on the personal level. The cost of creating was usually less than the probable cost of stealing. The absence of a benefit that outweighed the risk that accompanied theft reduced the risk to possessions considerably. However, this protection was less present when it came to the resources of another tribe, particularly when it came to women. If a surplus of males existed, it made sense to attack another tribe, kill the males and steal the females. There is a sharp line between the subsistence cultures of tribes and modern civilization. The distinction is specialization. It is with specialization that the rights of labor really come to the fore. However, it is also because of specialization that the right of capital took center stage. What is rarely noted is that at issue is the nature of ownership. But to fully understand this, we have to understand the two minds of man. There is an a priorian mind and a Babylonian. Babylonians tend to be liberals and materialists. When one owns capital, one has power, at least in the reality of a Babylonian. Babylonian thinking is centered on the law of the jungle. This means Babylonians are not adverse to using force to get what they want. The elites and other parasites are Babylonian. Their actions never pay the costs of what they do. Ultimately, they always end up seizing what rightfully belongs to God. Labor is ecumenical in that the work labor does brings people together. The activity of labor results in people having faith in one another. The level of trust goes up in situations where labor is the predominant force. Labor is contrasted with terror. Workers are the only people with rights because they are the ones who produce the wealth that give rights. If a worker produces wealth and someone takes it, the rights of labor has been compromised. This can only be done if terror as a political act has been introduced. Unless the worker has been terrorized in some manner, he or she is not likely to give up what he or she worked for. Labor has a right to what they produce. If not, if labor can be rightfully alienated from the product of his labor, but what means and authority is this done? It can only be done through terror. There is no argument or principle that would justify someone expropriating the product of labor. So, if there is no logical or moral justification for expropriating the wealth that someone else created, the only other alternative is to remove this wealth by force, by the application of terror.